his lord and lady of Brassingtown. A fortified castle lays in the curve of the lush green mountains of Green Draco Vale, also known as GD Valley. The castle is surrounded by a labyrinth of constructed stone and growing foliage. The castle reflects any light with its glistering white stone blocks stacking high walls and sharp columns. Tall, thin shafts of polished white stone topped with golden roof tiles. The light reflects across the valley below and subsequently heats the ground below, with the magnified light feeding the soils with rich minerals from above and soaking up the minerals from below. Seeping up from the volcanic ashes deep within the hills the foundation is built upon. The cascading waters that fall from the mountains behind the castle add to the concoction of a luscious growth. A jungle able to hide dangers within the thick forest full of fruit and trees and growing vegetables. Berries vines cover the base of most trees. Where the shade and berries could not grow, mushrooms would grow. Where the ground was open, it was littered with edible vegetation. Hunger was never a word known to the peoples that lived within Brassingtown for as long as the days lasted under laws of his lord and his lady. His lord invokes the laws of his king and upholds the king's laws with passion and dignity. His lord is there for the people's best interest at the center of all investments, and the core values are fair and are reflected in the actions of his lordship and her ladyship. The gesture entertains the lives of others. Growing up, his mother and father lived in the castle, his mother working as an attendant to her lady, the child's father working as the lord's personal blacksmith, making the request of his lord's design. The child boy was handicapped with blindness from a young age. However, with time and practice, the child's son became a gesture in the court of his lord and his lady. The beginning of a journey in a distant future, this child's son would gain the title of the lord himself with daughters by his side, and parents standing to admire the proud achievements of their son. The blacksmith for his lord meets his love through natural causes and coincidence. The attendant for Our Lady naturally meets this with mutual romance, and love blossomed and bloomed. From that pollination, a child, Lynn, was born. The town of Brassing celebrated the birth of this child for 3 days. This was the cultural tradition for every child born in Brassingtown. The festivals were planned well, and each time went for 3 days, designed by the mothers and fathers of the parents-to-be. Each festival was individualistic. Love life. Oh yeah, music, dancing, food for everyone, fun, health, and love were abundant for each and every one. Until this night, no fear or panic had ever been felt by the masses before. No need to reinforce safety and the comfort of love and the last kiss goodnight. Never had there been whispers of monsters hiding in cupboards and under beds or tapping of windows. There was no madness from continuous interrupted sleepless nights. No nightly hysteria and hallucinations that collide with reality. No such dread, not until one dreadful incident, one shocking evening that caused fear to spread throughout the hearts and minds of all the townspeople. One hot summer night, a slight breeze blows into the window, cooling the room as the childling slept. A silent smile curves his chubby cheeks, a small sigh in the safety of his crib, tucked in with love, snugged with a final kiss to sleep and dream of tomorrow. Both parents retreating backwards out of the room, the door closing, finally breaking their final look. The Lord and Lady of Brassingtown. Having a fortified castle in the curve of the lush green mountains of Green Draco Vale, also known as GD Valley, the castle is surrounded by a labyrinth of constructed stone and growing foliage. The castle reflects any light with its glistering white stone blocks stacking high walls and sharp columns. Tall, thin shafts of polished white stone topped with golden roof tiles. The light reflects across the valley below, and subsequently heats the ground below, with the magnified light feeding the soils with rich minerals from above, and soaking up the minerals from below. Seeping up from the volcanic ashes deep within the hills the foundation is built upon. The cascading waters that fall from the mountains behind the castle add to the concoction of luscious growth. A jungle able to hide dangers within. the thick forest full of fruiting trees and growing vegetables. Berries vines cover the base of most trees. Where the shade and berries could not grow, mushrooms would grow. Where the ground was open, it was littered with edible vegetation. Hunger was never a word known to the peoples that lived within Brassingtown for as long as the days lasted under laws of his lord and his lady. His lord invokes the laws of his king and upholds the king's laws with passion and dignity. His lord is there for the people's best interest at the center of all investments, and the core values are fair and are reflected in the actions of his lordship and her ladyship. The blacksmith meets his love through natural causes and coincidence. The attendant for Our Lady naturally meets this with mutual romance, and love blossomed and bloomed. From that pollination, a child was born. The town of Brassing celebrated the birth of this child for 3 days. This was the cultural tradition for every child born in Brassingtown. The festivals were planned well, and each time went for 3 days, designed by the mothers and fathers of the parents-to-be. Each festival was individualistic. Love life? Oh yeah. Music, dancing, food for everyone, fun, health and love were abundant for each and every one. Until this night, no fear or panic had ever been felt by the masses before. No need to reinforce safety and the comfort of love, and the last kiss goodnight. Never had there been whispers of monsters hiding in cupboards and under beds or tapping of windows. There was no madness from continuous interrupted sleepless nights, no nightly hysteria and hallucinations that collide with reality. One dreadful incident spread this fear throughout. One night as the childling slept in its crib, tucked in with love and a kiss to sleep and dream of tomorrow, within minutes of putting the childling to rest, what only seemed like seconds to the parents after closing the door, the childling suddenly screams out with pure pain, "Wah, wah," again, "Wah, wah, ha, wah." The hall seems to grow in distance as the parents panic, running to the child's aid. Again the screams were heard, finally reaching the hard wooden door. Somehow it stuck, swollen into the frame that holds it, and the flapping of wings can be heard on the other side of the door. His father bangs the door with his shoulder again and again and again. The sound of a crow cries out. It's heard attacking the child. "Caw, caw, caw," the crow cries. "Ma, wah, wah, ma, 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 ma," the childling boy squealing with fear and pain. "Caw, caw," the crow cries out again. The parents join together and with force, using the strength of panic, they manage to burst open the door. As they do, they are met with the shocking sight of a massive black crow that was flapping over their son. The sound of the door draws the attention of the massive bird. When the crow looks up, the parents are shocked to see the crow is holding both eyeballs of their newly born child within its beak. The two beautiful brown eyes of a child harshly and recklessly plucked from the defenseless child's skull. The child lives acknowledged by a squeal. The parents rush over, the father trying to capture the crow, and the mother yelling, "Shoo, shoo, shoo, my baby, shoo." The crow swiftly made away with the eyes in its mouth, flying out the window in which it came, fluttering about with muffled cries as it made its escape and avoiding the father's desperate tries to capture it. The black crow was driven by a wicked nature, Edward Zipper, a shape-shifting predator of opportunity, preying on the unwitty, knowing the eyes are of high value in a dark realm. The eyes of a newborn child hold pure innocence and cannot be tainted by any evil once removed from a child that is yet to experience the evils of the world. The eyes of an innocent child taken for trade now lay in a jar on a spellcaster's shelf, next to the pickled parts of animals, flowers, herbs, and leaves still living by the liquid it's held within. The den of the spellcaster hides deep within a darkened forest. However, this spellcaster has an unwitty apprentice. Through the distant eyes, the child learns through dreams of a distant den dark, hidden, just like the memories of the dreams themselves. The horrific sight of the crow had all and any type of crow or raven-like bird outlawed within the realms of Green Dracovale, any type of bird to be captured on sight. However, if any townsperson did see one of these birds, they would usually run in fright, cover their eyes in fear of being plucked out. Almost everyone now lives with the fear in their heart that the raven's claw would pluck your eyeballs straight from your head. Dread if you are ever to make eye contact or see 7 or more flying or perching at once. Before long, any blackbird became a dark omen. The child boy was handicapped with blindness on the eve before his name-giving ceremony. His father, in shock and despair, had no name to give. The child's mother, in turmoil, unable to utter a single word, silently rocks clasping her injured child. The Lord of Brassingtown, stunned with grief for the pain of his people, was asked to give a name to the nameless child. But even he was unable, refusing the names that came to mind, as all names in the Lord's mind pronounced the dark event and sounded of weakness. Leaving the name blank until his mind is uncluttered, free to give thought when the feeling of dread is past and we have avoided loss and captured this doom that stalks our windows at night. It is then I will have a name for the nameless male child of the blacksmith and his wife, the royal maid. His father, unable to overcome the event, grew distant, angry, full of hate and disappointment as his now blind son is unable to follow in the blacksmith's footsteps, unable to learn trade, with no sight to see the world around him. He is as good as dumb. The sight of the black pits, and even his bandaged face, reminds me of the lack of hope. His voice brings me tears, and I pity his future. I find I am full of disgust at what I must do as a father. It will bring me shame, but the burden is not my blame. This nameless child has no father either, as I cannot fulfill his needs and nor can he fulfill mine. He is no son of mine, only a distant and past disappointment. The blacksmith left Brassingtown and was not heard from again, not until the nameless child grew unto a man and had been restored with great title within the royal command. The beginning of a journey in a distant future, this child's son would gain title and respect in his adulthood over the ages, having daughters by his side, and his once absent parents will stand to admire, proud in the achievements of their son. The lack of sight did not seem to play any hindrance to the boy child, as acrobatics became his strength. The boy child trained with his uncle Jim, a man of many cultures and wise in many ways. Artistic performance played part in the arts of self-defense. The art of self-defense came with devotion to every muscle, every bone, every sense of the body, finely tuned and practiced in everyday life. The boy child did not train with any other, as his parents feared actions and movements with his blindness would play hindrance, and he would come to harm himself or others. However, once the skills training began, it was abundantly obvious the child was not held back by any cause, and one may be mistaken to think he was not blind at all. If it wasn't for the lack of eyes, his blindness would come under suspicion of being a lie. As the boy child grew, so did his skills. The education was absorbed, and when used, exceeded all expectations. The boy child's abilities to make others laugh through his movements, mime, and spoken word. His acrobatics would capture the attention of any onlooker who walked past as he entertained the streets of Brassingtown. Each gathering individual increases the joyful wonder as the audience is entertained with an expression of emotion, dance. Each movement inspires spectators to gasp in awe. Before long, the man-child was invited to perform for the royal ball, to join his lord and his lady in a grand festival to celebrate the birth of their fee child. A small lady childling gifted by her mother with golden locks from birth and the bright blue eyes of her father. This was to be a performance of a lifetime. However, the man-child would not be performing alone, as this was a celebration of love creating love. The request from his lord to have the performance based on two lovers coming together, a reflective performance of volcanic storm colliding with the wild winds of a tornado. The storm lasting for what seemed like hours, and after all was cleared, left in afterstorm's wake was a newborn island, an island raised from the deep waters below. The island already blossoms flowers of all colors in full bloom, trees as green with thick vines any childling would give to swing upon. So our blind man-child was introduced to Anya Travelsteady, the Travelsteady family, well known for their circus extravaganza, a show full of illusions of magical wonder, animals from far different places. However, the animals and all their tricks were not the main event. Anya dances with fire. Balls of heated flame surround her body without burning. The flame and her dance and weave, a sight unseen by the boy child. However, The heat of the flames dance across the center dirt floor. Her voice emanates, "Come join me," from within the flames themselves. Circular motions of moving fuel balls of flame. The man-child steps closer without hesitation into the heat of the burning flames. The step forward has his foot meet hers, left foot to left, then closer, knee to knee, hip to hip, now coming chest to chest, surrounded by a vortex of fueling flame. Twisting and turning, she remained in complete control. Face to face, her eyes see into the abyss of darkness where the man-child would have eyes. She remained calm. Her heartbeat only increased with his. Her breath did not exhale with shock. She knew who she had just fallen in love with, as so did he. Love had met in this moment. Then the drums of dance began. Boom, thud, 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 boom, thud, 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 boom, thud, thud, thud. The dance of love had begun. For days and nights the practice and love blossomed, a perfect expression of the Lord's request. It was during this time the man-child added to his entertainment skills, with Anya teaching the man-child how to dance with the flames of fire, to be unburnt by its flame, to the ability to breathe fire from his mouth in a glorious display, resembling a real-life dragon. As her dance so light on her feet, she seemed to glide as she danced with romance, seductive lust to enslave any fire-breathing colossus. However, she has chosen this one to bestow her love. Displayed in dance, a giant beast falls in love with a tiny little firebug. And when the waters were flames of love as the amber fall into stars in the sky above an island of purity. Luscious growth as the performers' bodies turn from beings of flames to ashes into two bodies coming to one as an island is spawned from their very backs, and the once bodies of ether being now one. An island of living green upon a white stone is the last thing seen on stage. The sounds of nature echo throughout the large hall magically without speakers or amplifiers. Every audience member felt they were within the island jungle itself. The performance was flawless. Thousands of spectators cheered and applauded. The Lord himself stood in admiration, clapping his hands hard and fast, and his lady also joined in with the standing ovation. No audience member saw the man-child as blind for that moment. There was nothing other than a great performance, no handicap. Fear was only by act, and met with applause, oohs and ahs. No one, even the man-child, was aware that his removed eyes are still alive, sat high on a spellcaster's shelf. The performance would have the man-child become one of the Lord's royal jesters for everyday entertainment, a mask covering the sight of his absent eyes. Before long, he was no longer recognized as the man-child, and had gained the respectful title of the royal jester. However, the love that had bloomed was not to last, as Anya had to return to her homelands far overseas. The travel-steady family had done exactly that, gone on to steady travel the high seas home, performing on ships as they pass. The love grew further in distance, and further into a passing memory far back in time. But in their hearts, love remained. Thought of one meets the thought of their other as both gaze up at the same sky over years, over seas, over distance. The memories remain. The royal jester, a respected entertainer within the golden glow of the White Castle. The jester, a valued member of the king's entourage and a must for all royal events. The jester, a must-have for the gathered children ready for a bedtime story. His improv performance to each word said captivates the restless minds of children. Once filled with noisy, sleepless children, the room falls to silence, all the children worn out from so much giggling and laughter. Growing up, his mother and father lived in a brick and wooden hut attached to the rear left side of the castle, next to the baker's den, the maid's sleeping quarters. The gardener's hut sat in the middle of the outback courtyard vegetable patch on one side of the hut, and an animal farm on the other. The Knight's Tavern way down the back, a common place for the average folk to be social and celebrate. The jester's mother is a personal attendant to Our Lord's Lady, specializing in the personal presentation and maintaining the requirements of Our Lady's needs. The jester's father working as the Lord's personal blacksmith, forging under endless hours, dripping sweat and mixing blood into metal. The jester's father did not falter and managed to forge all requests and meet the desire of his Lord's design with perfection. The former man-child, now a fully grown man with the title of the Lord's invoking, named the royal jester. The royal jester remains unwitting to the fact he receives teachings of the spellcaster's practice are images fed through distant dreams to the sleeping jester. The spellcaster lives in dark woodland, a small hidden den, a cave tree dwelling hidden underground deep within a dark forest, the only place crows gather and flutter, crying out the dangers of the forest floors below. Thorns in place of flowers, rot in place of growth. This was a place of death that no individual would like to go. Yet two innocent eyes look on, untainted by evil. The learning continues. Upcoming vengeance is predicted for a dawn that comes soon, that will have the man-child learn as to where his foresight is being held alive and captive. One day, like all other days, the jester lays to rest under the harmonious deem tea trees. As he lay other, he ponders the shapes of the clouds, what these big, fluffy white balls would look like as they move and take shape with the passing winds high above. The glamming sunlight brightly burning through the passing shades of the fluffy clouds, the sun's light so bright its heat is felt on the flesh, fueling the skin cells with energy, just as it does to all surrounding living organisms. The jester feels the connection to all at this moment, and at this moment he falls into a deep sleep of meditation, further and further into a deep and deeper sleep. In a dream full of darkness, something illuminating light over the herniation, coming closer. The light it shines can be seen without eyes in this dreamlike state. The light leading up a path, coming closer, brighter, a ball of light bright, so bright it's seen without sight, so warm it comforts any fears. So beautiful any onlooker is drawn to gaze upon what can't be seen with sight. Illuminating love, its energy is abundant and free of confinement. On the dirt path below, the jester stands and begins to dance, a dance of romance. The brightly burning light replicates as both dance towards each other, closer and closer. Together they weave with the purity of love and light, dancing light that begins to illuminate within the jester's belly, lungs, up through his chest. And finally a light emerges from his mouth and gently makes its way into the dancing ball of light. For that moment both burned brightly with the purity of light. Raised off the ground, even gravity had no place in such a realm. As both depart back to the ground below,